Okay, folks, we are sewing the block 3 called Susan's Chain in Susan Aki's Sampler Spree book. You can find this on page 16 of the book. And so I'm starting with all of my pieces cut out. If you need fabric requirements or dimensions, please go ahead and grab a copy of that book. So what I love about Susan's Chain is that it is a really kind of dynamic, complex looking block with really simple construction. So the only like real quote unquote technique in it is flying geese. And so that is the first thing that we're going to do. So to create flying geese blocks, you're going to start with a base rectangle, and then you're going to start with squares. And what you're basically doing is creating stitch and flip corners on this base triangle. So we're going to take our first block, we're going to take one of our squares, and I'm actually just kind of looking to make sure which right side is up because I'm using like a tone on tone with little polka dots on it, and sometimes it can be a little difficult to see. And so you're going to place it over on that right hand side. And what we're going to do, I am using a Baby Lock Chorus which has the laser on it. I've also put the diagonal seam tape here for those of you who are using diagonal seam tape, so you can kind of see how that works. But if you don't have either of those options, you can just go ahead and draw a line across corner to corner, and you're going to sew directly on that line. So me with my little laser, and please forgive me if you see any bumping or whatnot, because I am trying to make this as seamless a view for you, which means I'm kind of sitting at an angle. And I have to make, I'm going to be chain piecing because I'm making a few right now. So you're going to see me make a few. I'm trying to be as efficient as possible, and chain piecing is one of the best ways that you can go about that. You just want to make sure that's really well lined up. And piece. So. So we'll go ahead and take those apart. And what we're going to do is we are going to trim these. And let me see if I can get this a bit brighter for you. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and trim this 1/4 of an inch to the outside of this seam that you just stitched. Now you can use a ruler, a rotary cutter, or I'm just going to eyeball it and use a pair of scissors because it's a pretty short seam and it's not difficult to keep straight. So there you go. So that has all been trimmed, and now I'm going to press. And so just like that, we are half done with our half square triangles. So now we're going to repeat all of the steps we just did, but we are going to be doing it on the opposite side. So we'll place it on the left and we'll go across this way. And I don't really think that like left side, right side, which one goes first matters. kind of my personal preference, how I learn to do it and what I'm comfortable doing. So that's why I do it the right side and then the left side, but you could do the left side and then the right side. Okay, and so now we'll press these and then our flying geese will be done, and you'll see in just a moment what they're supposed to look like. All right, so our flying geese units are complete. And this is what they look like. Pretty great, huh? All right, happy sewing, folks. So now that our flying geese units are done, we can take the rest of the components from the Susan's chain block and we can actually build the block, because that's going to be the easiest way for us to sew it. So what we'll do is we will build it. So we've got our center piece. And I'm going to shift the camera just a bit so we have a little bit more workspace to work with. Okay, so we've got our centerpiece. We have our medium blocks that make up the 4 patches in the corners. It's still quite not enough, but there you go. Then we have the rest of the 4 patches. And some of this, you can spread it out a little bit, because, when we're cutting and we're laying them out, we are allotting. We have to think about the fact that they lay together nicely because there's seam allowances. So our cut pieces are bigger than how our finished pieces lay nicely together. So keep that in mind if stuff is like bumping into itself as you're laying it out. So here goes, our 4 patches are done. Now surrounding the centerpiece, we have these guys. Then we have our dark, but in my case pink, bars that go around. And what's interesting is what we're going to do is we're just going to construct the little segments, and then we will kind of spread out and place those together. So now the last things that go in are our flying geese. And it looks kind of sloppy right now, not gonna lie. But we're just doing this so that we understand the placement of where things are going, so that we can chain piece as much as possible and put things back where they belong, so we don't accidentally sew the wrong things together. So we've got this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sewing this block to this block, this block to this block, this to this. Same thing with these 4 patches, then this to this to this, and then the same thing with these 4 patches on this side, and this to this. And so I will go ahead and chain piece all of that. Then I will press it, put it back where it belongs, and you'll see it starts to get neater and neater and neater each pass of chain piecing that we do. And it will all come together rather quickly from this stage forward. So those flying geese construction is kind of the most that you'll have to deal with as far as like technique. Okay, so I have put on my patchwork foot. And I apologize about the motion of the camera. I just really want to make sure that you're able to see. All right, so now we chain piece. And I apologize about my arm crossing through. Okay, so our first round of chain piecing is done, and we have sewn together kind of everything that we can at this base stage. And so now we're just snipping it all apart so we can press it. So I'm gonna head on over to the pressing station and get these all pressed for you. And then I'm gonna place them back into here. And so you'll see everything starts to really come together even after this very first pass. Okay, so I am back from the pressing station, and I'm going to be placing all of my pieces back out, and I am just going to move this over. And sorry for the bumping, but so that you can see what's going on here. And so now I'm placing these pieces into the layout again. And it's kind of amazing how after only one pass, it really does shrink up and you start to see the block pretty quickly. And so now, on this next round of chain piecing, I'm going to be constructing the 4 patches. So I'm going to sew these to this, same here, here, and here. And then I'm going to sew the leftover bar to the other side of the square on all 4 of these units. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and do that chain piecing, and then it'll be time to press those. So let's move you back over to the sewing machine so you can watch me. And let's have at it. Okay, so now that round of chain piecing is done. Clip them apart, take them to the pressing station is next up. Okay, so we are back from the pressing table. I'm just going to move this on over so you can see how it's starting to look. It's really coming together. That one won't lay down. But it's really starting to come together. Now this next trip to the machine, I'm going to be sewing together all of our flying geese to these bar units. And then what happens then is once those are pressed, we then basically have like a 9 patch to put together. So we're really in the home stretch already. So let's head on back to that sewing machine. Okay, so we are back from the pressing station, and let's get you this tilted so you can see. We're doing this last bit of layout, and we're putting these right in. Now it's time to construct our rows. So I'm first going to be attaching this to this, this to this, this to this. Press it, and then attach these to those. Make sense? Pretty straightforward, guys. It's awesome. So now let's head over to the sewing machine. And let's go. Okay, and next up is attaching this last row to these that we have just completed. Okay, so look how good it is. It's coming out so great, and I can't wait to see yours as well. So if you are doing the slow along for the sampler spree, please go ahead in the Facebook group and put the pictures of your finished blocks. Obviously, we've got one more step to go, and if you haven't busted out your pins yet, this is the time I suggest doing it, just to make sure that all of these things line up so that you get a really great look. And there's never too many pins. Like, seriously, never too many pins. So you'll see I'm kind of pinning the heck out of this. And it's also because, you see, I'm finding this is a little shorter than that. That'll probably work itself out in the stitching, but I want to make sure that all of my seams that need to line up will stay lined up once I start stitching. My arm might get a little bit in the way on this one, but it's because I really want to make sure it turns out bang on, and sometimes the awkward positioning does ruin that effect. And yes, it does look like it sewed itself right out. So I am trimming. I'm actually going to take big scissors because, like I've mentioned, these are not my favorite snips and they are not really working for me. But I'm trying to trim as much of these excess threads as possible. When you do it along the way, it really will help in shortening your haircut time later. So we're going to go ahead, press this, and then we're going to put on this last row, and then Susan's chain will be done. All right, so now it is time to put this onto here. And again, I am going to pin this probably to death, and that's okay with me, because the more pinning you do, the more accurate it will be. I tend to not pin the really small pieces, just because they can get a little bit fiddly and the pins can get in your way. But once we get to like constructing the overall look of the block, I really want to make sure that the seams that are supposed to line up, and then that way we get a really good look. But the look is important. That's like the whole point of the show here. Okay. I think this one is gonna be just bang on already, but we're not taking any chances. Okay. All right, and now it's time to press, and then one last reveal. And I would love to see what your blocks look like. And there you have it, folks. Susan's chain. And this is block 3 in Susan Aki's sampler book, which you can find on page 16. If you don't have a copy yet of the book, you can purchase it at your local Quilt Shop or at the link in the description below. Happy sewing, guys!